who is the program manager of San Diego LGBTQ Pride. In a minute, I will turn the forum over to Susan Jester, who will introduce our special guest. But first, let us pray. Gracious God, you have blessed each of us with your spirit. In your wisdom, you have made each of us a unique treasure. O God, you are the wellspring of our lives. Cause us to flow with courage, strength, and compassion to live our stories openly, proudly, and joyfully. O God, you are the presence of love. You embrace us with your love. May we embrace ourselves, our partners, our lovers, our friends, our children, our dear ones, with the power of your unending, boundless love. O God, you are the spirit of peace and wholeness. Open our eyes to the gifts and blessings we offer and receive from each other. Open our hearts to welcome each other fully and truly. Open our hands to embrace and support, to lift each other with joy, with song, with peace, and with deep friendship. Today, as we continue to celebrate pride and community, let us walk together with strength, compassion, and love. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Susan?
Good morning, everyone. Well, it's my great honor and joy to introduce my friend Bob Leyh. Bob has been inactive in San Diego LGBT community since moving here in 1997. He's been involved with the Front Runners and Walkers, an LGBT running club, Special Delivery, a meal delivery service for people living with AIDS, Scouting for All, and AIDS Walk San Diego. He's also the former vice president of San Diego Democrats for Equality. Bob has a bachelor's degree in history from St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York, and a master's in public administration from National University. Bob and his partner, Bill McLean, a school teacher in the San Diego Unified School District, celebrated 26 years together in 2019. Bob is the program manager of San Diego Pride, and special to me and relevant to St. Paul's, Bob is my co-conspirator, co-coordinator of all things Light Up the Cathedral with Pride. It would not happen in terms of our relationship with San Diego Pride without Bob's constant commitment to interfaith, the interfaith service, and his wonderful friendship with me. So I'm very honored and proud to introduce Bob Leyh.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Well, I'm not there. As I mentioned earlier to some of you, I'm up in Santa Cruz for the weekend, and from here we go on to the Russian River. So we're taking a little vacation after Pride, but it's great to be here with you all. St. Paul's, like Susan said, does have a special place for me and for many in our LGBT community as a truly welcoming place. A little short story. We were attending the coronation ball, maybe, Susan, or it was some imperial court event down in Mission Valley. And Susan stopped by our table and she said to one of my colleagues that she would be in touch because she needed to start working on the Light Up the Cathedral. And I think, Susan, this was like 2016 or 17. And after Susan left, I said to my colleagues, Serafina and Fernando, I said, I would really like to take this on. I'd like this as a passion project of mine. And they didn't fight me, thankfully. They said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And it's been my pleasure to work with Susan and the great folks at St. Paul's since then to plan and coordinate Light Up the Cathedral, a Pride interfaith celebration, which does mean a lot to our community. So thank you, Susan, for allowing me to be part of this journey with you. As my screen says, San Diego Pride, a legacy of liberation, and we're working to create safe spaces. Many of you may think about San Diego Pride and you may think, well, I know they do the light up, but they also do that big, huge parade and that 2-day festival that sort of impacts us at St. Paul's. And as I was watching the Olympics this morning, I thought the Olympics has evolved and changed to stay with the times. I mean, yesterday they had skateboarding, and they have beach volleyball, and they have surfing. Certainly none of the Olympic sports we think of from the ancient times, or even from when they reinstated the modern Olympics back in the early 1900s. But to stay relevant and to stay vital, they changed with the times, and that's something that San Diego Pride has done to stay relevant, to stay meaningful. We've continued to change with the time. And so I'm going to take you on a little journey with me today. As Susan mentioned, my name is Bob Leyh. I'm the programs manager. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I want you to feel free to ask questions. If I can't see you, maybe someone can help me, but I'm okay with questions throughout. Interrupt me. If you have a question, you don't have to wait till the end. So let's see if I did this right. And the next screen, uh-oh. All right, now I'm in trouble. How do I move to the next screen?
You should be able to use the down arrow on your computer,
I should be.
or try the right arrow.
I'm trying every arrow. Oh boy. Bill says hit enter. No. Anybody got an idea now? All right, try this. Hold on. We're just going to do that. Is that okay, folks? So you can see at least. Is that okay?
That works.
All
Yes.
right. So as many of you know, the origins of, or maybe you don't, the origins of what is the modern Pride movement began in 1969. Certainly not the first time the LGBT community fought back, several times in LA and then in San Francisco. But New York in 1969 was the big sort of culminating movement that continued for a few days, where we fought back against police brutality, police coming into the clubs, police arresting people for dancing of the same sex, for holding hands. Let's not forget, in 1969, it was illegal to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. You could be arrested. You could be fired from your job. You could be sent to a mental institution. So it wasn't a great time. And for these brave young folks who fought back against the police and said, enough is enough. We have rights too. And we stand on some great shoulders, and certainly Susan's is one of them. Although she wasn't there at Stonewall, she certainly is part of that legacy also. So what were we fighting? We were fighting, a system that just said we were expendable. Oftentimes when people were arrested, most of the time back in the late 60s, early 70s, when someone was arrested, they would have their names and published in the paper. And that continued even in San Diego under the Union Tribune. If you were arrested in one of these vice raids, your name, your address, and sometimes even your occupation. So people lost a lot. People lost their families, their homes, their apartments, their jobs, and people committed suicide because of this. So we were fighting for the right to be who we are, true to ourselves. And then this ignited this movement, the Gay Liberation Front, Stonewall. And while this was in 1969, in 1970, the very first Pride parades remembering Stonewall was in New York, and then also in LA, Christopher Street West, Stonewall in the West. In San Diego, we didn't get into the act until a little later, and I'll get to that. It wasn't until 1973 that they voted, the American Psychiatric Association, to remove homosexuality as a mental disorder. But it's just, imagine having your identity voted on. And this was the first time in 1973 by the American Psychiatric Association. I remember, and Susan remembers back in the 2000s when I think it was Susan was a 2000 and when was the marriage vote in California when our fellow citizens voted to deny us again our equality by denying us marriage. So we as LGBT people have often had to have our rights sort of had to fight for our rights. So in 1974 is when Pride comes to San Diego, and before then there was some movements up at San Diego State. There was a gay liberation front started by the students there, and in 1974 some organizations went down to the police station to get a permit to hold a march. And I'm told, I wasn't there, I'm told it was a very not a very friendly conversation. I'm told the desk sergeant sort of laughed them out and said, "There's not going to be any faggot march in my city. Keep moving, get out before we bash your heads in." What was interesting is, still in 1974, about 200 people marched anyways on the sidewalks, and some of them marched with paper bags over their head because, again, in 74 still you could be arrested for being gay, and you could lose your job, and you could lose your livelihood. Your family could disown you, kicked out of apartments. So we've come a long way since 74, and I want to share a mission. Our mission is to foster pride, equality, and respect for all lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender communities, locally, nationally, and globally. And we do that in many ways, and I'm going to show you how we do that in many ways so that we see that while we are a festival and we are a parade, and that's what probably most of the community knows us as, we're much more than that, and we celebrate that today. So who is San Diego Pride? Well, we're one of San Diego's oldest LGBT nonprofits. And since 1994, 95, we've given back $3 million to our LGBT community. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. We are the #1 largest civic event in the city of San Diego for one-day civic event. Our parade of over 300,000 people. And what makes us unique in prides around the country and the world is that we have more than 30 year-round programs and events. Many prides come together 6 months before their celebration and really get their planning underway. Ours is a year-round planning, but ours is also year-round events, which I'm going to show you some of those. And one of the things that we're most proud of is that our Pride celebration is an economic impact positively for the city of San Diego to the tune of almost over $26 million for that Pride weekend that we bring into the city through revenues, transit occupancy tax for hotels, which goes right into the city's general fund, which is why the city is very helpful and very encouraging us to try to help us get back on our feet as soon as we can. Today, San Diego Pride attracts more than 300,000 spectators for our parade. The two-day festival has over 50,000 people from 32 countries, 475 cities. In 2019, the last time we had our full parade, we had just over 250 individual distinct parade contingents. This could have been the mayor and Susan, and then after she finished with the mayor, she ran back to the starting line and marched with St. Paul's. And at our festival, we have more than 200 different vendors. I want to just take a minute to talk about the parade. You remember the first one we talked about was a march. And then in 75, we did get a legal permit. We got some hope. We had some help from the Tom Homan LGBT Law Association and the ACLU. So we were able to get a permit in 1975, but it was still very small march for the most part. And it was in around the 90s that we began to really grow the parade, because you got to remember in the beginning, corporations and businesses didn't want to be associated with the gay name. They didn't want that anywhere near their logo. Good luck trying to find a politician. Very few churches wanted to participate in the parade, let alone schools or universities. So it's only really since the mid 90s that we've really expanded the parade, and the community has asked to join us, and we're very happy to have them join. Susan can tell a story about AIDS Walk, being the founder of AIDS Walk. And in the beginning, and Susan, you could not put the word AIDS anywhere in your title and hope to draw corporate funds or support. Isn't that correct? Give me a thumbs up, Susan. All right, come to the mic. All right, good. So, in the beginning, they had to call it a walk for life. So there was that stigma that people just didn't want to be associated with anything to do with LGBT. And it's only in the last, since the 90s that we've been able to broaden our parade reach to the point now where sometimes we can't keep those politicians away, and we have to fight with our corporate sponsors to make sure they realize it's an LGBT parade. It's not a big marketing tool for them, even though, of course, it is. Like I mentioned, our economic impact, you can see how we've grew from 2014 of a 10.9 million to 2018. That was the last year we had an independent study done by a group out of San Diego State. Again, quite proud of the fact that we are able to be the largest civic event that brings in revenue for our city. So there's a myth, and it's a common myth, that LGBT Americans live in upper classy urban neighborhoods. They think of the gay white young men that Will and Grace, those of you who remember Will and Grace, and they think that that's just that's what LGBT, that 2 income, no kids. And unfortunately, the myth is what it is, because that's not always the case. Like most stereotypes, the myth of gay affluence is greatly exaggerated. And LGBT people struggle disproportionately with higher levels of poverty compared to straight people. We know that, unfortunately, women earn less than men, often in many industries. And as a result, if you have a lesbian couple, they tend to be earning less. And then if you have couples of color, LGBT of color, and certainly our transgender siblings are earning even less. So there's that myth, and we work hard to struggle to lift that. And again, go back into our mission of fostering pride, equality, and respect. I'll give you a second to read that. So we talk about our political strides. Yes, we can now get married, and yes, we can now serve openly in the military, but we can see that we still are below our peers when it comes to economic security. I am lucky. I have always been employed, and my husband too is a school teacher. So we've never experienced food insecurity. And if you saw me, you'd know that was definitely not my case. I tend to have food, plenty of food, but it's not something to make fun of, certainly. And especially if you have children and you're raising children and you're on food stamps and you're worried about feeding your children. So I wanted just to make sure you understand that there's that myth that we're all, living in Mission Hills and La Jolla, enjoying the good life. Many of us are struggling to survive. And that's what Pride is helping to find ways to work with our community and support our community. So you want to think about low-income LGBT people. Think about the young man from Iowa or Kansas or Nebraska or El Cajon, Santee, or Alpine, who's kicked out of his house because his parents find out he's gay. And where do they end up? Do they end up working the streets somewhere to survive? Or the transgender woman who's constantly turned down for a job because they don't look right. And as a result, they again may have to turn to street work to survive. And scary and sad, I think, more than anything else, is that as our seniors become older and sometimes have to move into assisted care or nursing homes, sometimes they have to go back into the closet because our nursing homes or assisted care are not equipped or do not deal with same-sex couples. And again, what a sad thing to have to deal with when you've worked hard your whole life to be out. So these are just some of the experiences that LGBT people face. I didn't even put the transgender in this one because we know that that's worse, but you can see that LGBT people sometimes face greater than their straight counterparts in all these areas. Again, I'm welcome to questions. Anytime you have a question, just speak right up. California, you notice the whole West Coast and the Northeast. California, we call it the blue bubble. We certainly have many rights here in California that are some other states are, if you're LGBT living in other states, you do not have. And I think you know where I'm going with all this shortly. "51% of our LGBT people live in states where you can still be fired simply for being gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender." I remember my first job out of the Navy, because when I was still in the Navy, when I got out of the Navy, it was still don't ask, don't tell. I went to work for a government defense contractor, and I was their HR director. And before I was in the interview, I told the president and the owner of the company that I was gay. And I said, "I'm telling you this because I don't want there to be a problem. We deal with a lot of defense contract or, military people. I don't want this to be a problem." And they just looked at me and said, "No problem." And it was very weight off my shoulder, but I felt I needed to do that so that it didn't come up later. But I mean, I luckily live in a state where it's I'm protected. Other states were not. And it's not just jobs, it's education, public accommodations, housing. It's again, we LGBT across our country are still treated like second class. In fact, this is where I'm going, is the Equality Act. It's before the Congress today. It's been passed by the House. It seems to be languishing in the Senate. And the Equality Act would, across the country, provide federal civil rights protection for all LGBT people by prohibiting discrimination on sexual orientation or gender identity. And I think back to some of the Phyllis Schlafly and the ERA and Anita Bryant and Save Our Children, and how they bring such hate and rhetoric to these types of campaigns when people are just trying to be treated equal and have equal protection under the law. All right. And I should go back here for a minute and just say San Diego Pride, supports the Equality Act, and we work as a 501c3, which we are. We cannot endorse a candidate. We cannot say vote for Johnny or vote for Sally or vote for Susie, but we can say we support the Equality Act, and we encourage people to work with their representatives to pass the Equality Act. We can take a stand on a position, and we have taken a stand on a position. One of my colleagues is our education and advocacy manager. So we have a full-time employee who works for education and advocacy, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a sponsor at Pride. Because being a sponsor is more than just slapping that rainbow flag on a product or on the window of your business, and you get to call yourself an ally. It's certainly much more than that. We work with our sponsors, and we have close to 100 sponsors. We want to know what they're doing internally with and for their LGBTQ employees. And we also want to know how their profits are being spent and donated. Again, that's fostering pride, equality, and respect for our community. So as an LGBT person, we were very careful about where our dollars go. It's the gay dollar. How do we spend our dollar? And I'm proud to say just this past year, even though we did not have a festival or parade, the vast majority of our sponsors stayed with us. I'll give you one example. Susan and I went to a fun celebration at the airport about a month ago now to celebrate Alaska Airline, our official airline sponsor, because they had a brand new plane. It was not a brand new plane, but it was a plane that was brand newly decorated with the rainbow fly with pride, fly the sky with the rainbow colors. And they had a nice little sort of coming out flight that came to San Diego, and Susan and I got to go down to see that. They continue to be a sponsor of ours, and we appreciated that. But there were also sponsors this year that we said no to. And I'm just going to tell you, when Walmart is free to do whatever they want with their profits, and they're free to give their profits to politicians who vote against LGBT issues, and they're free to give their dollars, their profit dollars, donate to elected officials in states that vote against trans rights bills and trans health bills. They can do that. It's a private company. But you know what? We can say, we don't want your money, and we don't want right now you to be part of what we are, because we don't want to give to our community the feeling that we support an organization that actively works against us. And so Walmart and Bud Light were both sort of removed from our sponsors in 2021. And it's really important that we are careful about, who we allow to say that we're a sponsor. So we look at the corporate equality index, the human rights campaign, and I encourage you, if you're curious at all, you can pick almost any company, from a bank to healthcare to Walmart or Home Depot, and you can look up their score, and you can say, wow, I didn't realize how good they were, or wow, they're only scoring 64%. So maybe I ought to think about going to this company that scores 100 or higher and spending my dollar there. Again, how we spend our money is very important to us, and what a sponsor does is really important, not just for us, but how they're using the money that they're making in profit. So we know that that LGBT adults and families would switch to brands that they know are LGBT friendly. So again, we want to make sure that we're working with sponsors who are LGBT friendly. And my colleague, who's our director of philanthropy, and her staff, they actively go out into the community to our sponsors and do training there on what it means to be an ally, what it means to be, remember our mission. Okay, hopefully you can see it. Hopefully my little thing is not covering the mission. Is my little thing at the bottom covering the mission?
No, we could see it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for saying that. So, again, I put this up here so you have a minute to think about what our mission as we go to our next slide. Because an ally, what is an ally? Is it someone who just throws that rainbow flag on their car, or brings out the rainbow flag for the month of June or July, depending on where they live? All right, we're going to take a time out. Remember I said just a second ago, I said June or July. Why does San Diego Pride have their Pride in July? Any guesses? Susan, you can't answer that. Okay. San Diego Pride is the co-founder of an organization called CAPI, C-A-P-I, and it's a consolidated association of Prides International. And we were part of the co-founder of that. And it was an opportunity for different prides from around the southwestern part of the United States to get together and talk about how to improve, what problems do you face? How do you face the same problems we face? How do you deal with that? And one of the things was they tried to figure out, is there a way that we cannot have all of our prides in June, same weekend, where we're competing with folks, especially in Southern California. So at the time, most of the prides were in July. In June. And San Diego had another reason for wanting to move from June, is that we all know that June in San Diego is associated with gloom. That's right. So we said, boy, let's get away from that June gloom, where we had some really ugly years of pride festivals and parades. We had a couple of 70s and 80s where it rained. So we said, can we move? So what happened was Long Beach moved to May, LA stayed in June. Palm Springs moved to November. Makes sense. Phoenix moved to early April, and San Diego moved to July, allowing all of us to become sort of destination prides where we didn't have to compete. So a little history there, little tidbit of why we moved our pride to July. So anyways, what is an ally? An ally is more than someone who just throws that rainbow up for the month of pride. It's somebody who uses their position to educate others and then to hold people accountable for creating a safe and welcoming environment. An ally can be a corporation, a business, a person. Teachers can be allies. You know, allies address fairness, and they take a stand when they see things that aren't fair. Allies are predominantly straight people, but LGBT people can be allies to one another. So, you know, what does an ally look like? There's an ally. From the first that I knew of St. Paul's, I knew that it was a welcoming community, a community that embraced and welcomed LGBT people. And you've done nothing to disprove that. And you are an ally to the LGBT community. So why are LGBT allies needed? Well, whether they're religious allies, educational allies, or corporate allies, here are some of the reasons we still need allies. And I want to just take a minute to also say for those of you who might not be who are with us this morning who are not LGBT, you may not have ever experienced being LGBT and being more or less made to feel unwelcome or actually kicked out of your religion. And you may wonder, what's the big deal with, you know, why are you celebrating St. Paul's? Well, growing up Catholic, it was quite clear that this was just not going to happen. And many of our LGBT people who grew up in evangelical or Southern Baptist churches struggled to come out and be their true self. And we know when you're struggling with that, mental health are issues, suicide's an issue, and then homelessness if you're found out and you're are kicked out. So to have an ally church, an ally faith that celebrates you and welcomes you as a whole, as your whole self, is something quite special. And again, it's one of the reasons why I love working with Susan and the dean and everyone at St. Paul's. We just had our Light Up the Cathedral 2021. It was on July 14th. That's Bastille Day, right, Susan? And it's something else that day, but we'll let Susan tell you later. And it was your community, your parish was just so welcoming, whether there was the bell ringer or the people handing out the programs or the people helping to seat people, the photographers, the cookies and punch afterwards. You welcomed the San Diego's LGBT community, and we won't forget that, and we truly appreciate that. So St. Paul's, thank you. Dean Penny, thank you. So, all right, remember we got back to our mission of fostering pride, equality, and respect locally, nationally, and globally. Well, locally, we are involved with Habitat for Humanity. This was a picture from 2019, the last time we were able to do this. We spent a weekend helping to build that house. You see those houses you see behind us. We invited our partners and our volunteers to come and be part of this. We, through my colleague Jen LaBarbera, who's our education and advocacy manager, they are out working with schools, doing public education training, LGBT cultural competency training, talking about pronouns and why they're important. We are out in the community at tables, at walks and breakfasts. We're at, the Harvey Milk Breakfast. We're at the Martin Luther King All People's Breakfast. She-Fest and our coalition groups are all ways that we engage and educate in our community sometimes our fellow LGBT, as well as our straight community. This is a picture of our Latinx community in 2019. That has grown, and they were just up this past weekend in Escondido, having a table up there for the first ever Escondido Pride. In fact, it was just yesterday. We work really hard to make sure our LGBT people get out and vote. Again, we can't tell them who to vote for, but we certainly can tell them and help them register and call them and remind them to get out to vote. Voting with Pride is something we take a real pride in. Working to get we had over 10,000 calls in the 2000, the election in 2020 election. And before that in 2016, not only obviously presidential elections, we really focus on, but even the local elections. We do phone banking, text banking to encourage our LGBT community to get out to vote. Our youth programs, we have a full-time year-round youth program overseen by adults, but primarily run by youth. It's middle school and high school aged. And this just shows in 2016, 2017, and 2018, some of the statistics and how we've grown our youth programs. During COVID, we increased our online programming to greater numbers than ever before. As you know, COVID, well, it took kids who went to high school and kids who went to middle school who maybe had some friends there, and now they were in their homes the whole time. And if they weren't in environments where it was safe for them to come out, it was often very difficult. We had some students who used to go into the bathroom and turn the shower on and join us for some of our youth-led programs. Power Hour, we had every Tuesday and every Friday, which was Zooming. We have internship programs. We've had high school students come in to work with Pride in all different manners. Number 3, the Youth Leadership Academy is now in its like 9th or 10th year. It's growing from just the first timers to now we have a track where if you're repeating, we have a track for first time students and a track for students who are returning. And we've also added a educator and caregiver track to come in and learn about youth programs and youth leadership and youth development. At our festival, we have a youth zone. In April, we have a youth art show. We have one of the only Pride youth marching bands in the country. And on the second Saturday of every month, we have Lunch Bunch. Come eat with me. We invite kids from all over the county to come to the office to have lunch and free. And you can see how from 2016 to 2018, those numbers have just gone up and up and up. And at our most recent Pride on July 17th, we had a lot of little prides all around the area. We had Black Pride, we had the Asian Pacific Islanders, we had Latinx, and our youth had a youth picnic in Mission Hills Pioneer Park. Close to 400 youth showed up, and we had some games and some literature and free food and just a great time for them. Nationally, our executive director, Fernando Lopez, and again, our education and advocacy and our philanthropy team are working to educate not only Border Patrol, FBI, the Navy, corporate presentations. We sit on panels. We do workshops like this where we give talks, helping people understand more about San Diego Pride and the LGBT community. You say, why would we deal with Border Patrol? Well, there are LGBT people who are coming, the Border Patrol will deal with and pick up as they try to enter our country. And having them be aware of things like pronouns and transgender issues can help them maybe better treat people in a more humane way. Internationally, we are part of what's called Pride World Forum. We receive support and work with the State Department. For the past couple of years, the Mexican Consulate General here in San Diego and the U.S. Consulate General in Tijuana have marched in our parade and been part of our organization. We host delegates through the Fulbright Conference who come to the United States to learn about things like human rights and LGBT rights. And so far to date, we've had over 452 delegates from 131 countries come to Pride and learn about, again, Pride in San Diego, but again, learn about LGBT history, learn about this. We had one intern from Peru who's gone back to Peru and is working to help make his country more LGBT friendly. Our philanthropy. Remember in the beginning of this program, I talked about our, since 1994, 95, we've given back more than $3 million. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. Yes, our festival costs money. Yes, it costs money to be in our parade. Part of that is to pay for the permits for the parade, the police, the fire, the road closures. Part of that is to pay for the stages of the festival. But we're pretty good stewards, and this is not our first rodeo. We know what we're doing, and we're able to keep our costs down. And as a result, we typically, in nonprofit world, we don't say profit, but we have an excess of revenue at the end of the year. And what we do with that excess revenue is we build our programs, we pay our mortgage, and we give back to the community. We give back grants. People can apply for grants. This is 2019. We gave out $200,000 in community grants, up to $5,000 you could apply for. And you can see some of the organizations that we gave grants to. They have to submit a grant. It's a simple one-page proposal on what they want the money for, what they're going to use it for, what the outcome will be. They submit a budget, and if approved, they get a check for up to $5,000. Some only ask for $1,000. And you can see here all the different groups that have applied over the years. And like I said, we've given out over $3 million, something we're really proud of. Again, we are probably, well, we're one of the few prides in the world that has a philanthropy pillar as part of our focus of our organization. Outreach, education, and philanthropy. And we're proud of that. And it's, you know, people who support us, when you come to the festival and you have a nice cold one, you're helping to support the San Diego Pride. Or if you're just having a soda and walking around. One of my favorite parts is volunteers. This is a volunteer appreciation picnic. This is just the middle section of the group. Now imagine this whole size group to the right and this whole side group to the left. We had about 400 people at our picnic. All told, for Pride weekend, I used about 2,200 volunteers. The Saturday alone, the festival is anywhere between 15 to 1,700 volunteers and another 500 or so at the parade. Again, our volunteers are fantastic volunteers. We love them. We couldn't put on Pride. We couldn't be the success we are without them. And we asked when they sign up to be a Pride volunteer. And by the way, anyone can be a Pride volunteer from age 15 up to, I think one of our senior volunteers, and I think they're way older than Susan. I think they're probably I think I had one that was 92. And we love our volunteers. 30% of our volunteers identify as straight allies. And again, what is an ally? It's someone who's there for our community and is part of our community. So we love our volunteers and we try to take care of them. We have volunteer managers. These are people that have committed to giving not just one time, but they give once a month. They're coming in for training. We have a full-time accessibility volunteer manager to make sure our events are as accessible as possible, to make sure we have senior seating areas at the festival or parade with ASL interpretation. We have guides, we have people, we have braille and large print. So we have ramps where needed to make sure people are welcome and accessible. We have a medical team volunteers at our parade and festival to make sure people are safe, and those that do maybe get stung by a bee or and have maybe celebrated a little too hard in the sun can have come and be treated and be safe. We have volunteer coordinators. These are still people that give monthly time to educate and learn about Pride and how we can plan and be safer and better. And then of course we have our supervisors and our volunteers. Now, again, it's not just volunteering with Pride at the festival or parade. You can volunteer year round with us through, like yesterday up at Escondido at Kit Carson Park. That was a volunteer group that went up there to represent our Latin Coalition. Our She Fest, we have outreach coming up. We're going to be marching in Poway at the Poway Days Parade with this Trans Family Support Services. The next day, we're going to be right in Balboa Park at the suicide prevention walk and little tabling there. Then we're going out to Imperial Valley for their Pride. So we have opportunities to be involved with Pride year round as volunteers to help people feel a connection to their community. And there I even gave you the link on how to volunteer. That first part of that link, sdpride.org, I'd encourage you to look it up. Go onto our website, scroll around, learn a little more about who we are, learn a little bit more about our board of directors. Past board member was Susan Jester. We thank her for her service to us and her still what she does for us. And with that, Stacy, you said try to make it 10 minutes towards the end. Hope I didn't cut too short.
You were right on target. That was a fantastic and informative presentation, and your PowerPoint was excellent.
All right.
I want to thank you again for taking time out of your vacation to be with us in the forum today. And now I would like to open it up to questions.
Comment. July 14th happens to be Bob Ley's birthday. So he ended up spending his entire birthday day and evening in our cathedral, helping us light it up. And I also forgot to mention in his introduction, Bob's a Navy veteran. He served 6 years in the Navy. And you can tell by the way he organizes and sets things up. Managing 2,200 volunteers is quite a major undertaking, and it just wouldn't happen without Bob's skills. So I just wanted to show that appreciation to my buddy.
Thanks, Susan.
Go Navy, beat Army. Hey, Bob, this may be a touchy subject, but this summer and this march that they had this year, I think there was an issue around disinviting the police organizations. And you kind of touched on disinviting sponsors as well. And I wonder if you'd talk a bit about how the organization kind of deals with that line. I mean, do we now disinvite log cabin Republicans, or, you know, I mean, kind of where does that go? Because we're not one monolithic community, right? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. I was hoping somebody would ask that. So thank you for asking that. I'm going to go back to our mission statement: fostering pride, equality, and respect for the LGBT community locally, nationally, and globally. It is a careful, nuanced it is a careful discussion that our board of directors had. It is a careful discussion that our staff had, and with the sponsors, our feelings were very clear that if this corporation was taking profits and using their profits, which again is their right to use it, but if they're using it to do harm to our community, we just felt that we could not associate with them. I'm going to tell you a little story towards that. We have a Pride group, a program at Pride called Devout, DEVOUT, and it's a LGBT interfaith group of which St. Paul's is a member, and they do programming throughout the year. And we kind of vet when churches want to be part of it, because the last thing I would want to do is to we welcome a church and then we find out this church has very subtle but yet anti-gay beliefs in maybe conversion therapy. And I would not want to have someone come up to us and say, why is this church here? Why is this organization here? Do you know what they do? Do you know what they do to LGBT people? So we feel we have to very solemn responsibility when it comes to that, how we let people participate with us. Now, we worked with both of those sponsors I mentioned, and we worked with them to talk as high as their sea level, and tried to get with some of their corporate people to let them know, and we would help them educate and advocate. But at the end of the day, that didn't change. So we just felt it wouldn't be right to let them celebrate. And it gives the impression to the rest of the community that this group is okay. When you see somebody marching in our parade, you think, oh, they must be good. They must be good. Yeah. And so we just felt this was not possible. Now, as to law enforcement, again, go back to our mission, and now put yourself in as a person of color or a transgender person. And we heard from our LGBT community of color, and we're not talking these, we've been told we've been hijacked by radical Black activists. I didn't know that the librarian for the city of San Diego, who happens to be Black, is a radical activist. I do know that he has been pulled over several times for driving while Black. Our current board co-chair, David Thompson, teaches at the Bishop School in La Jolla. He's an African-American man. He told me that at least once a quarter, he gets pulled over at night leaving school because he's driving while Black in La Jolla. So when we heard these stories, at first we just said, well, things, a few bad apples, but we kind of heard repeatedly this systemic institutional racism, and how our LGBT people of color did not feel comfortable coming to the Pride Parade when there were uniformed police there. And again, we had to go back to our mission, fostering pride, equality, and respect for the LGBT community locally, nationally, and globally. So we took a pause. We said, we're going to disinvite the police from the parade. Well, the nice thing, if you would, in 2020, there was no parade. And in 2021, there was no parade. What there was in 2021 was a community march. And certainly LGBT officers, law enforcement could march, but they would march just like anyone else. There were no contingents. There was no floats. There was no vehicles. It was a march, and they were welcome to march in civilian clothes. Because we took a pause, we also said, let's figure out a way to create a dialogue. So we created this Healing and Safer Communities committee that's made up of LGBT people of color. And they have been meeting with Pride people, and we have been meeting with the police LGBT liaison. We've met with the chief, and a dialogue is happening. The ACLU statistics, the Union Tribune statistics, and the police of their own statistics. When the mayor of San Diego, a man of color himself, comes out and says their numbers don't lie, then something needs to be changed. And we're creating a dialogue with the hope and the vision that there will be an opportunity for the law enforcement to return. I don't know what it will look like. Maybe they'll be in polo shirts and slacks. I don't know. I don't know, but there's an opportunity that's happening right now that is creating a dialogue. Bayard Rustin said, when any one of us is hurt, we're all hurt. When any one of us is discriminated against, we're all discriminated against. And again, I know this sounds really cold, but San Diego Pride's mission is to foster pride, equality, and respect for our LGBT community. And sometimes we have to take a hard stand to do that, to make our LGBT community feel safe and create that safe space for them. So long answer, but I hope I wanted to be honest with you and give you our answer there. Tom, were you one of the ushers handing out programs at the Light Up the Cathedral? You look familiar. Yeah, were you one of the ushers handing out programs? All right. Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that.
Do we have any other questions in the last 2 minutes? Okay, well, thank you again so much for being here. I just want to say that next week we go live in the forum with our very own, the very Reverend Dean Penny Bridges. And in 2 weeks, we will have a special guest from the Bay Area guide us in a Visio Divina workshop, and you won't want to miss that. Have a great Sunday, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bob.